The anesthesia was just beginning to wear off when Joanna saw the photo on social media. She was lying in a recovery room that smelled of antiseptic and cold steel, her lower abdomen throbbing with a dull, hollow ache where, just 3 hours ago, there had been a heartbeat. Now, there was nothing, no baby, just a jagged line of stitches and a silence so loud it made her ears ring. She reached for her phone with a trembling hand, the IV line tugging at her skin. She had called Garrett 14 times before she drove herself to the emergency room. 14 times. He hadn't answered once. But now, glowing on the screen of her phone, was the reason why. It was a post from Audrey, his executive assistant and lifelong family friend. The caption read, "Emergency comfort dinner with the best boss in the world. Thank you for always being my rock when the world falls apart." The photo showed 2 glasses of red wine clinking against the backdrop of the city skyline view from the rooftop restaurant where Garrett had proposed to Joanna 7 years ago. Today was their 7th anniversary. Joanna didn't cry. It was strange, really. She felt as if the surgeon had cut out her tear ducts along with the ectopic pregnancy. She just stared at the screen, her thumb hovering over the timestamp, posted 20 minutes ago, 20 minutes ago. Joanna was waking up alone, asking a nurse if her husband had arrived yet. The nurse, a kind woman with tired eyes, patted her hand and looked away. That look of pity was worse than the pain. "Mrs. Winthrop?" The nurse peeked back in. "Your ride share is here? Are you sure? Are you sure there is no one coming to pick you up?" "I am sure," Joanna said, her voice raspy. "My husband is very busy." The ride home was a blur of streetlights and potholes. When the car pulled up the long, winding driveway of the estate, the house looked like a mausoleum. It was a beautiful, sprawling mansion that belonged on a postcard, but inside it was just an empty box where Joanna had spent 7 years trying to be the perfect wife for a man who looked right through her. She limped into the foyer, clutching her stomach. There, sitting on the marble entry table, was a monstrosity of a floral arrangement. 999 red roses. They were jammed into vases, spilling over the edges, creating a suffocating wall of red. A card was tucked into the center. Joanna pulled it out. The handwriting wasn't Garrett's. It was jagged and rushed. "To my beautiful wife, happy 7th. Love, Garrett." Joanna let out a dry, humorless laugh. He hadn't even written it himself. He had probably barked an order at his secretary between meetings, or worse, told Audrey to handle it. Send her the usual, make it big. She dropped the card on the floor. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Finally, it was him. Joanna. Garrett's voice was impatient, accompanied by the background noise of wind and traffic. He was outside the restaurant. "Why are you calling so much? I'm in the middle of something important." "I know," Joanna said. She leaned against the cold wall, her legs shaking. "I saw the post. Audrey seems devastated." Ethan sighed, a sound of pure annoyance. "Don't start this tonight, Joanna. Audrey's boyfriend broke up with her. She was hysterical. She has no family in the city, you know that. I couldn't just leave her." "It is our anniversary, Garrett. And I sent flowers, didn't I? Look, stop being so clingy. You're at home, safe and sound. Audrey needed me. I'll make it up to you this weekend. We'll go to the lake house." "I am not at the lake house," Joanna whispered, looking at the bandage under her shirt. "And I am not safe and sound." "What, speak up? The signal is bad," Garrett snapped. "Look, I have to go. She's crying again. Be a supportive wife for once and understand the pressure I'm under. I'll be home late. Don't wait up." Click. The line went dead. Joanna stood in the dark foyer for a long time. She looked at the rose-red, vibrant, expensive. They represented everything her marriage had become. A grand public display with absolutely no root, destined to rot. A sudden clarity washed over her. It wasn't rage. It wasn't sorrow. It was the cold, hard realization that the man she had loved since college, the man she had softened her edges for, the man she had covered her tattoos and changed her wardrobe for, he didn't exist anymore. Maybe he never did. Joanna walked to the kitchen, grabbed a heavy-duty trash bag, and returned to the one by one. She began to yank the roses out of the vases. Thorns tore at her palms, drawing blood that mixed with the expensive petals, but she didn't feel it. She didn't feel anything. She stuffed every single flower into the black plastic bag until the vases were empty and the floor was wet. She tossed the bag outside the front door next to the garbage bins. Then she went upstairs to the master bedroom. She didn't pack a suitcase, not yet. Instead, she opened the safe in the closet. She took out a document she had prepared 6 months ago, just after the last time he forgot her birthday but had been too afraid to sign. She uncapped a pen. Her hand didn't shake this time. She signed her name, Joanna Vance, not Mrs. Winthrop. Just Joanna. She left the papers on his pillow, right in the center of the bed where he was supposed to be sleeping tonight. Wingert finally stumbled through the front door at 2 a.m., smelling of expensive wine and Audrey's perfume. The house was silent. He frowned at the empty vases in the hallway, assuming the florist had messed up. He loosened his tie as he walked up the stairs, ready to execute a quick, obligatory apology and fall asleep. He pushed open the bedroom door. "Joanna, you awake?" The bed was made perfectly. Joanna was nowhere to be seen. The only thing on the pristine white duvet was a thick manila envelope with the word divorce bolded at the top. Ethan chuckled, shaking his head as he tossed his jacket onto a chair. "Drama queen," he muttered to the empty room. "Always so dramatic." He picked up the papers to throw them in the trash, just like he always did when she threatened to leave. But this time, something caught his eye. On the nightstand, where her wedding ring usually sat in a crystal dish, there was nothing. The dish was empty. And for the first time in 7 years, the bathroom door was locked. Ethan stared at the locked bathroom door for a solid minute, his laughter dying in his throat. He jiggled the handle again, harder this time. "Joanna, open the door. This isn't funny." The only answer was the faint sound of running water from the taps. I said, "Open the door." "Do you have any idea what kind of day I've had?" Audrey was... The lock clicked. The door swung open, and Joanna stood there, wrapped in a fluffy white bathrobe, her hair still damp. Her skin was paler than usual, almost translucent under the harsh bathroom lights, and her eyes were different. They weren't puffy from crying. They were flat, like 2 shards of polished obsidian. "Audrey was what?" Joanna asked, her voice eerily calm. Ethan blinked. He had expected tears, screaming, maybe a thrown pillow. This was new," he faltered. "She was a mess. Her boyfriend broke up with her. She needed a friend." "I see." Joanna brushed past him, her shoulder checking his arm with surprising force. She walked to her side of the bed and picked up a book. "Wait," Garrett followed her, frustrated. "You are angry about the dinner. I get it. I should have called sooner. But look, I got you something." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small, velvet box. It was a Necklacia delicate diamond teardrop on a silver chain. He had bought it 3 weeks ago for his mother's birthday, but forgotten to give it to her. It would do. "Happy anniversary, babe." He held it out, waiting for her face to light up. She always forgave him with jewelry. It was their unspoken currency. Joanna didn't even look up from her book. "It is beautiful," she said monotone. "Put it on the dresser." "Not thank you, just a command." "Are you serious right now?" Garrett scoffed, tossing the box onto the bedside table with a clatter. "You're really going to hold this over my head after everything I do for us, for you?" "For me." Joanna finally looked up. Her gaze was so intense, it felt physical. "What exactly did you do for me today, Garrett?" "Everything." He threw his hands up. "This house, this life. You think a girl from a trailer park in Ohio gets to live like this without me? You think anyone else would put up with your moods?" Joanna closed her book with a snap. The sound echoed like a gunshot in the quiet room. "My moods," she repeated softly. "Is that what you call it when I bleed out in an emergency room alone because my husband is too busy comforting his assistant over a bad date?" Ethan froze. "What are you talking about?" "I was at St. Grace's Hospital from 4 p.m. until 9 p.m. Garrett. Ectopic pregnancy. Ruptured tube. Emergency surgery." The color drained from Garrett's face. He opened his mouth, then closed it. I didn't know. You didn't tell me. I called you 14 times, she said, her voice steady but cold enough to freeze water. You sent me to voicemail every single time because I was in a meeting with the partners, then in a meeting with Audrey. Joanna finished for him. She stood up, wincing slightly as the stitches pulled. Funny, her Instagram story looked a lot less like a boardroom and a lot more like the rooftop at the Ritz. Ethan paled further. That was to calm her down. She was hysterical. You know how she gets. "Oh, I know how she gets," Joanna said. Her eyes drifted to his phone, which was buzzing on the dresser. The screen lit up with a name, Audrey Faye. Ethan grabbed the phone quickly, silencing it. "She is just checking to make sure I got home okay." "Of course she is." Joanna walked to the closet and pulled out a suitcase. Not the designer Louis Vuitton set he had bought her for show. The old, battered duffel bag she had brought with her from Ohio 7 years ago. The one with the faded band patches. "What are you doing?" Garrett asked, panic finally creeping into his voice. "Where are you going?" "I am leaving, Garrett." "You can't leave. You just had surgery. You need to rest." He tried to grab the bag from her, but she yanked it away. "Don't touch me," she hissed. "Don't you dare touch me!" Ethan recoiled as if burned. "You are being irrational. This is the hormones talking. Look, I am sorry." "Okay, I am sorry I missed the calls. I am sorry about the baby, but we can try again. We have plenty of time. You are young, healthy." "I can't have children anymore, Garrett," she said flatly. "They took the tube. The other one is scarred from the infection I got 3 years ago while you were on that boys' trip to Vegas. Remember? Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, looking trapped. I can fix this. We can adopt or surrogacy. Money isn't an issue. We'll fix it." "You can't fix this with a checkbook, Garrett." Joanna finally raised her voice, throwing a pair of jeans into the bag. "You can't fix a dead marriage with a credit card." Ethan's face hardened. His sympathy evaporated as quickly as it had arrived, replaced by the defensive arrogance he wore like armor. "Fine, go then. Take your little temper tantrum to your sister's couch. See how long you last without the credit cards, the car, the club memberships. You'll be back in a week, Joanna. You always come back." Joanna zipped up the duffel bag. She didn't look back at the luxurious room, the expensive furniture, or the man she had once thought was her soulmate. She walked to the dresser and picked up the velvet box. Garrett smirked, thinking she was taking the necklace after all. Joanna walked to the window, opened it, and hurled the jewelry box into the darkness below. It landed with a faint splash in the decorative koi pond. "Oops," she said, deadpan. "Clumsy me." Then she picked up her the Birkin bag he had given her last Christmas as an apology for missing Christmas Eve. Dinnerin dumped its contents onto the bed. Her wallet, keys, lipstick, phone. She held the empty bag up. It was worth more than her parents' house. "You can give this to Audrey," she said, dropping it at his feet. "It matches her soul, empty and overpriced." She grabbed her keys and walked out the bedroom door, leaving Garrett standing there, stunned, surrounded by the wreckage of his own making downstairs. She didn't stop. She walked straight out the front door into the cool night air. Her old Honda Civic, the one Garrett had begged her to sell years ago, but she had stubbornly kept in the garage under a tar poured to life on the first try. It sounded rough, unrefined, and perfect. As she pulled out of the driveway, her phone buzzed again. A text from Garrett. "Don't do anything stupid. The lawyers will freeze the accounts by morning if you walk away." Joanna smiled for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. It wasn't a nice smile. She typed back a single line. "You think I stayed for the money? That's cute." "Oh, honey," Garrett thought the credit card was a leash. He forgot that the hand feeding the dog is also within biting range. He mistook her silence for submission, her patience for dependency. When a woman tells you she didn't stay for the money, you should be terrified of what she did stay for, and what she is taking with her when she leaves. Spoiler alert. It is not the Birkin, it's the receipts. She hit send, tossed the phone onto the passenger seat, and merged onto the highway, heading south, away from the manicured lawns and the silent screams of the suburbs. Back to the city, back to the noise, back to herself. The air in the Winthrop estate was always stale, scented with old money and disapproval. But on Thanksgiving, it was suffocating. Joanna hadn't planned to come. She had been living out of her duffel bag at a cheap motel for 3 days, healing in satisfied silence. But then Garrett's mother, Eleanor, had called, not Garrett, Eleanor. The matriarch whose approval Joanna had spent 7 years chasing like a dog after a car. "We expect you at 4 p.m. sharp, Joanna. Leo is asking for you. Don't be selfish." Leo, that was the kicker. Her stepson, whom she had raised since he was a toddler, while his biological mother partied in Europe and Garrett built his empire. 7-year-old Leo, who had pneumonia last Christmas when Garrett was stranded in Aspen, and whom Joanna had nursed back to health alone. She couldn't leave Leo, not yet. So she drove her beat, up Honda Civic, up the long, winding driveway, parking it conspicuously between a Bentley and a Porsche. She wore a simple black dress, no jewelry, no makeup to hide the dark circles under her eyes. She looked like a ghost arriving at a banquet. When she walked into the grand dining room, the conversation stopped. Ethan was at the head of the table, looking tired but impeccably dressed. To his right sat his mother, Eleanor, draped in pearls. To his left sat Audrey. Audrey was wearing a dress that looked suspiciously like the one Joanna had bought for herself last month, but never worn. It was a shimmering emerald green silk number, tight in all the right places. She was laughing at something, Eleanor said, her hand resting casually on Garrett's forearm. "Oh, Joanna," Audrey chirped, her voice sickeningly sweet. "We were just worried you wouldn't make it. Traffic must be awful in wherever you are staying." "Motel 6, Joanna said flatly, pulling out a chair at the far end of the table, opposite Garrett. The traffic was fine, the company's better there too. A ripple of awkward silence went around the table. Garrett glared at her warningly. "Sit down, Joanna," Eleanor snapped. "We're eating." The meal was a blur of passive-aggressive comments. Eleanor critiqued Joanna's hair. It looks thin, dear. Her skin, so pale. Are you ill? And her lack of appetite. Joanna is just tired, Mother, Garrett said, sounding bored. She has been emotional lately. Emotional? Eleanor scoffed. Well, we can't have that. Audrey here has been so helpful with the charity gala planning. She's so poised. You could learn a thing or two, Joanna. Joanna gripped her fork until her knuckles turned white. I am sure Audrey is very helpful, she said, her voice tight. Especially with husbands, Audrey gasped, bringing a perfectly manicured hand to her chest. Ethan, she's doing it again. Enough! Garrett slammed his hand on the table. Joanna apologized. Now, Joanna said. She stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. I'm here for Leo. Where is he? He is in the playroom, Eleanor said dismissively. He doesn't want to see you when you are like this. Hysterical. I am not hysterical. Joanna's voice rose, cracking slightly. I lost a baby 3 days ago, Eleanor. My husband was having drinks with her while I was in surgery. The room went dead silent. Even the servants froze. Eleanor blinked, her fork hovering halfway to her mouth. A baby? Yes, Joanna said, tears finally pricking her eyes. An ectopic pregnancy. I almost died. For a second, she thought she saw a flicker of genuine shock on Eleanor's face, but then Audrey spoke up, her voice trembling with fake sympathy. Oh, Joanna, that's terrible. But are you sure Garrett said you were just having a heavy period? Joanna turned to Garrett slowly. He looked away, his jaw clenched. You told them I had a heavy period, she whispered. I didn't want to worry them, Garrett hissed. It was Thanksgiving. Why ruin the mood? Ruin the mood? Joanna let out a laugh that sounded more like a sob. You let me bleed out alone so you wouldn't ruin the mood? Mommy? A small voice came from the doorway. Joanna spun around. Leo was standing there, clutching a toy robot. He looked from Joanna's tear-streaked face to Audrey's concerned one. Leo, Joanna took a step toward him, relief flooding her chest. Baby, come here. Leo hesitated. He looked at Audrey, then he looked at his father, then he looked back at Joanna. You made Daddy sad, Leo said, his voice small but accusing. Audrey said you ran away because you don't love us anymore. Joanna felt like she had been punched in the gut. No, Leo, no, I would never. Go away, Leo shouted, stepping back. He ran past Joanna and buried his face in Audrey's emerald silk skirt. I want Audrey. She is nice. You are mean. Audrey wrapped her arms around the boy, looking up at Joanna with a triumphant, pitying smile. Shh, it is okay, Leo. Joanna is just sick. She doesn't mean it. It was the final straw. The thread snapped. Joanna didn't scream. She didn't cry. A strange, cold calm washed over her. She looked at the tableau before her. Her husband, his mistress, his mother, and the son she had raised, all united against her. She walked over to the table, calmly, deliberately. She picked up the crystal gravy boat, filled with steaming, rich turkey gravy. You think I am sick? She asked softly. Ethan's eyes widened. Joanna, put that down. You want a show? Joanna continued, her voice devoid of emotion. I'll give you a show. She poured the entire contents of the gravy boat over Audrey's head. Audrey shrieked as the thick brown liquid cascaded down her perfect hair, over her expensive dress, and dripped onto Leo's shoulder. Leo screamed and scrambled away. You bitch! Audrey screeched. Jumping up, Joanna! Garrett roared, standing up. Joanna wasn't done. She grabbed the edge of the tablecloth with both hands heavy. Damask cloth laden with crystal glasses, porcelain plates, the massive turkey, the sides, everything. With a grunt of effort, she yanked. Crash. The sound was magnificent. Glass shattered, china exploded, food flew everywhere. The perfect Thanksgiving dinner lay in a ruin of broken shards and mashed potatoes on the expensive Persian rug. Eleanor was standing, clutching her pearls. Her mouth open in a silent O'Garrett was staring at the mess, his face purple with rage. Audrey was sobbing, wiping gravy from her eyes. Joanna stood amidst the wreckage, breathing hard, feeling lighter than she had in years. "Happy Thanksgiving," she said to the room. She turned to Leo, who was staring at her with wide, terrified eyes. "One day," she said to him, her voice gentle but firm, "one day you'll understand who fought for you and who used you. I love you, Leo, but I love myself enough to leave this hellhole." She walked out of the dining room, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor, leaving the chaos behind her. She didn't look back. She walked out the front door into the pouring rain, the cold water washing away the heat of her anger. She got into her Honda, started the engine, and drove away. This time, she really wasn't coming back. The rain didn't stop until Joanna crossed the bridge into the city's industrial district. Here, the streetlights flickered, and the buildings were covered in graffiti rather than ivy. It was ugly, gritty, and real. It was perfect. She pulled the Honda up to a nondescript steel door situated between a dumpster and a boarded-up electronics store. A neon sign buzzed erratically above, the Black Rabbit. Joanna killed the engine. Her hands were shaking again, not from fear, but from the adrenaline crash of the gravy boat incident. She took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of wet pavement and exhaust the perfume of her survival. She banged on the steel door, 3 distinct knocks, a pause, 2 more. A sliding peephole scraped open, a pair of mismatched eye-sewn blue. One brown peered out. "We're closed," a gruff voice grunted. "Open the damn door, Jax," Joanna said, leaning her forehead against the cold metal. The bolt slid back instantly. The heavy door swung inward, revealing a mountain of a man covered in ink, with a beard that reached his chest. Jax looked at Joanna, soaked, shivering in a gravy-stained cocktail dress, eyes hollow. "Harp," he rumbled, his face softening into pure concern. "I thought you were dead, or worse, summering in the Hamptons." "I wish I was dead," Joanna muttered. Stepping inside, the bar smelled of stale beer, sawdust, and memories. "I need a drink, and I need the box." Jax didn't ask questions. He didn't ask about the dress, or the car, or the 7 years of radio silence since she'd met Garrett and scrubbed her past clean. He just locked the door behind her, poured 2 fingers of whiskey into a dirty glass, and disappeared into the back office. Joanna downed the whiskey in one burn. It felt like fire cauterizing the wound in her chest. Jax returned with a dusty shoebox-sized metal container. He slammed it on the bar, kept it safe, just like you asked. 7 years, Harp. Didn't think you'd ever come back for it. "Neither did I," she whispered. She opened the box. Inside wasn't money or jewels. It was a hard drive, a leather-bound sketchbook, and a set of tattoo needles. Joanna picked up the sketchbook. She flipped it open. It was full of design slogos, branding concepts, marketing strategies. Before she was Mrs. Winthrop, the trophy wife, Joanna Vance, had been a brilliant underground brand strategist. She was the one who had come up with the logo for Garrett's first company. She had ghostwritten his first best-selling book. She had built the myth of Garrett Winthrop from the ground up, polishing a mediocre nepotism baby into a tech visionary. And he had erased her name from every single page. "He froze the cards 10 minutes ago," Joanna said, checking her phone. A notification from the bank confirmed it. Access denied. I have $12 in cash and a quarter tank of gas. Jax leaned on the bar. You got a place to crash? I was hoping your couch was still lumpy. It is lumpier, Jax grinned. But it is yours. So what is the plan? You gonna cry about him? Joanna looked at the hard drive in the box. It contained the backups, the original emails, the proof that she was the brain behind the Winthrop empire. Not him, but more importantly, it contained the kill file, a collection of every illegal corner Garrett had cut, every bribe he had paid, and every lie he had told the board of directors. She picked up the tattoo machine. It hummed to life, a familiar, aggressive buzz. No, Joanna said, her eyes darkening. I'm not going to cry. I'm going to rebrand. This right here. This is the gospel. Tears are for funerals. Rebranding is for resurrections. Joanna didn't just decide to move on. She decided to rewrite the source code. She picked up a tattoo gun instead of a tissue because she knew the truth. You can't scrub away a man like Garrett with soap and water. You have to cover him up with better art. Ink over scars. Strategy over sorrow. The next morning, the sun glared through the grimy windows of Jax's apartment above the bar. Joanna woke up on the lumpy couch, her neck stiff, but her mind razor sharp. She grabbed her phone. It had exploded overnight. Ethan had been busy. A headline from a major gossip blog popped up. Winthrop Thanksgiving horror. Estranged wife suffers mental break, assaults assistant. The article painted a tragic picture. Garrett, the long-suffering husband, trying to help his mentally unstable wife who had spiraled due to substance abuse issues and attacked the beloved family friend, Audrey. There were quotes from sources close to the family, Eleanor claiming Joanna had been erratic for months. Joanna scrolled through the comments. They were brutal. She looks crazy. Poor Garrett. He deserves better. Gold Digger finally snapped. Joanna laughed. It was a dry, confident sound. He thinks he can spin this, she murmured. He thinks he controls the narrative. She stood up and walked to the mirror in the hallway. She looked like a wreck, but underneath the facade, she saw the operator, the strategist. She went to her duffel bag, pulled out her laptop, and connected the hard drive. She didn't post a defense. She didn't deny the allegations. That was amateur hour. In crisis management, if you are explaining, you are losing. Instead, she logged into a dormant Instagram account with 500K followers that she had built years ago as a mood board for Urban Designate anonymous account that everyone in the industry followed, but no one knew who ran. She uploaded a single photo. It wasn't a selfie. It was a screenshot. It was a text chain from Garrett's phone, dating back 3 years. Ethan just wired the inspector the 50K. The safety report for the West Side building will be clean by morning. Audrey, you're bad. What about the cracks in the foundation? Ethan's cement is cheap. Lawsuits are cheaper. Don't worry about it. Joanna didn't add a caption. She didn't tag him. She just added a single hashtag, number Daryl Winthrop legacy. She hit post. Then she went to the bathroom, found a pair of scissors, and began to chop off her long, perfect wife's hair. Long strands of chestnut fell into the sink. When she looked up, a shaggy, jagged bob framed her face. She looked dangerous. She looked like Joanna Vance. Her phone buzzed. It wasn't a text. It was a call from a number she recognized. The New York Times. Joanna smirked, applying a coat of dark red lipstick she found in the bottom of her bag. Hello? She answered, her voice smooth as silk. Miss Vance, this is Sarah Jenkins from the Times. We just saw a post on the Urban Myths account. Sources say you run it. Is that screenshot real? Joanna checked her fingernails. Sarah, darling, that screenshot is the appetizer. Would you like to meet for lunch? I have the main course on a hard drive. She hung up. The war hadn't just started. Joanna had already launched the nuke. The diner, Sal's Place, was a relic of a bygone Aravenel booths patched with duct tape. The smell of burnt coffee permanently etched into the walls. It was the last place anyone would look for Mrs. Garrett Winthrop. Perfect. Joanna sat in the back booth, her newly shorn hair still feeling light and strange against her neck. She wore a leather jacket Jax had pulled from a lost and found box, worn over her expensive, gravy-stained cocktail dress, which she had hastily hemmed with safety pins to look like a punk rock mini. Sarah Jenkins slid into the booth opposite her. The Times reporter was younger than Joanna expected, with sharp eyes behind thick-rimmed glasses and a nervous energy that vibrated off her. She clutched a voice recorder like a talisman. "You don't look like the woman in the tabloids," Sarah said, eyeing Joanna's jagged haircut. "The Daily Mail is running a headline calling you the Thanksgiving Terror. I prefer the Gravy Boat Assassin. Personally," Joanna said dryly, signaling the waitress for coffee. "But branding was always my husband's weak point. Or rather, it was his weak point once I stopped doing it for him." Sarah placed the recorder on the table. "You said you have proof, real proof, not just a screenshot." "I do." Joanna pulled the hard drive from her bag, but she didn't hand it over. She let her hand rest on it. "But first, we need to establish the narrative. You think you are writing a story about a messy divorce. You are not. What am I writing then?" "You are writing the story of the Vista Tower," Joanna said. Sarah frowned. "The new residential high-rise in Battery Park. The one opening next week. Winthrop calls it the Jewel of the Hudson." "It is a glass coffin," Joanna said, her voice dropping an octave. 3 years ago, during the foundation pour, they hit a pocket of unstable silt. The engineers recommended a delay to reinforce the pilings. It would have cost 6 months and $12 million. Joanna slid a folded piece of paper across the table. It was a photocopy of an internal memo, stamped confidential. "Ethan sanctioned a bypass," Joanna continued. "He paid off the lead inspector, a man named Gorskiand, used a cheaper concrete mix that cures faster but has a lower tensile strength. That screenshot I posted, that was the day he signed the death warrant for that building." Sarah picked up the paper, her eyes scanning the dense technical jargon. Her skepticism vanished, replaced by the horrifying realization of what she was holding. This is criminal negligence. If people move in there, the vibration from the subway lines will cause microfractures within a year, Joanna finished. Within 5, a collapse is statistically probable. "Why now?" Sarah asked, looking up. "You stayed with him for 3 years after this." Joanna looked out the window at the gray rain. "Because he told me the memo was a draft, that he fixed it. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. I was busy raising his son and building his image. I was the one who got him on the Forbes 30 under 30 list. I wrote the speeches about integrity and vision." She turned back to Sarah, her eyes hard. "I built the pedestal he stands on now. I am going to take a sledgehammer to it." Suddenly, the diner went quiet. The murmur of conversation stopped. On the small television mounted above the counter, the channel had switched to CNBC. Breaking news flashed across the bottom of the screen. Liv Garrett Winthrop addresses rumors regarding viral allegations. Joanna watched as Garrett stepped up to a podium. He looked devastatingly handsome, sad, weary, but strong. Beside him stood Audrey, looking appropriately somber, and his mother, Eleanor, looking like a disapproving gargoyle. "Ladies and gentlemen," Garrett began, his voice thick with rehearsed emotion. It is with a heavy heart that I address the recent social media attacks against my company and my family. My wife, Joanna, she has been struggling with severe mental health issues for some time now. Her paranoia has led her to fabricate wild conspiracies. The camera zoomed in on Garrett's face. A single, perfect tear glistened in his eye. The so-called evidence being circulated is nothing more than doctored images created by a woman in the midst of a breakdown. We are currently working with authorities to bring her home so she can get the help she desperately needs. We ask for privacy. Sarah looked at the television, then at Joanna. He is good. He is really good. He is reading a script, Joanna said, unblinking. A script I wrote for him 4 years ago when a disgruntled intern threatened to sue for harassment. He is reusing my material. People will believe him, Sarah warned. The mental health angle creates reasonable doubt. If we publish this without a smoking gun, his lawyers will bury the Times in litigation for a decade. You want a smoking gun. Joanna reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. How about the audio from the night of the gala, the night I was in the hospital? She tapped the screen. It wasn't a recording of Garrett. It was a recording of the building inspector. Gorski, voice 1. Gorski, Mr. Winthrop. The cracks are widening. If we don't pour the reinforcement. Voice 2, Ethan. Listen to me, you little bureaucrat. I have the mayor in my pocket and the city council on my payroll. You sign the paper, you take the cash, and you shut up. If this project is delayed one day, I will make sure you never work in this state again. Do we understand each other? Voice 3, Audrey, giggling. Ethan, baby, come back to bed. Let him sign it. The recording ended. Sarah's mouth hung open. You recorded his calls. I synced his cloud to my iPad to manage his schedule. Joanna shrugged. He never changed the password. It's Winthrop #1. Sarah grabbed her phone. I need to call my editor. Now, if we can verify the voice signature, we can run this within the hour. We can interrupt his little press conference. Do it, Joanna said, as Sarah frantically dialed. Joanna's phone buzzed. A text from Jax. Heads up. 2 black SUVs just pulled up outside the Black Rabbit. They're looking for you, private security. The nasty kind. Joanna's heart skipped a beat. Garrett wasn't just doing spin control. He was hunting. Sarah, Joanna said, standing up and throwing a $20 bill on the table. You have the drive. You have the audio. Run the story. I have to go. Wait, where are you going? Sarah hissed, covering her phone. To pick up the one thing I left behind, Joanna said, pulling her collar up. Your jewelry. Joanna shook her head, a grim smile playing on her lips. Number Leo. She slipped out the back door of the diner just as the bell above the front entrance jingled. 2 men in dark suits and earpieces walked in, scanning the room. They were too late. The architect had already left the building, and she was on her way to burn the rest of it down. The Winthrop penthouse sat atop the spindly, terrifying height of the Millennium Spire Another, one of Garrett's phallic monuments to ego. It was 60 floors up, accessible only by a private elevator that required a retinal scan or a key card that only Garrett and the head of security possessed. Or so Garrett thought. Joanna sat in her Honda, idling 3 blocks away, watching the live stream of the press conference on her cracked phone screen. Garrett was wrapping up his performance, looking solemn as he dodged a question about his missing wife. Mr. Winthrop, a reporter shouted, is it true your wife has access to sensitive company data? My wife, Garrett said with a pitying smile, struggles to operate the microwave. I assure you, Winthrop Industries' data is secure. Joanna snorted. You arrogant prick. She didn't have a key card. She didn't have a retinal scanner. What she did have was the master override code for the building's HVAC system back door. she had insisted the architects install so she could regulate the temperature in Leo's nursery without calling maintenance. She tapped into the building's network using the admin credentials on her laptop. System access, maintenance mode. She sent a command, trigger fault, Zone 60 penthouse, AC Unit 3 overheat warning. 2 minutes later, a service van pulled out of the building's underground garage. The regular maintenance crew was heading to lunch. Perfect. Joanna grabbed a generic gray jumpsuit she'd bought at a thrift store on the way over, pulled it over her clothes, and grabbed a tool belt. She pulled a baseball cap low over her eyes. She walked confidently to the service entrance. The guard, a new guy named Steve, looked up from his phone. "Vac alert on 60, Joanna said, keeping her head down, consulting a clipboard. "System says the nursery unit is frying. You want the kid to roast, or should I go up?" Steve hesitated. "I didn't get a call." "That is because the automated system catches it before the fire alarm does." Joanna lied smoothly. "Check your panel. Zone 60 blinking red." She had triggered the light on his console remotely 3 seconds ago. Steve glanced at his board. A red light was indeed pulsing. Yeah. Okay, make it quick. Mr. Winthrop is due back in an hour. I only need 10 minutes. He buzzed her through. The service elevator smelled of hydraulic fluid. It opened directly into the utility room of the penthouse. Joanna stepped out, stripped off the jumpsuit, and smoothed her punk rock dress. The apartment was silent. It was a museum, not a home. White marble, white leather, chrome accents. Cold, she heard the low hum of a television from the living room. She crept down the hallway, her boots silent on the expensive rugs. In the sunken living room, Leo was sitting on the floor, staring blankly at a cartoon. He looked small, too small. Next to him sat Greta, the heavy-set Nana Garrett had hired because she didn't ask questions. Greta was scrolling through TikTok on her phone. "Greta," Joanna said softly. The nanny jumped, clutching her chest. "Mrs. Winthrop, my God, you aren't supposed to be here," Mr. Winthrop said. "I know what he said," Joanna cut in, stepping fully into the room. She held up her phone. "But in about 2 minutes, Mr. Winthrop is going to be very, very busy. I have to call security," Greta stammered, reaching for the wall panel. "Don't," Joanna warned, her voice dropping to that dangerous, icy calm. "If you touch that button, I'll tell the press about the bonuses. Garrett pays you under the table to keep quiet about his late night visitors. The IRS will be very interested." Greta froze. Her hand hovered over the button. The threat wasn't real, Joanna didn't know for sure, but in this house, everyone had dirt, and everyone was afraid of it being found. "Leo," Joanna said, ignoring the nanny now. Leo looked up. His eyes were red, rimmed. He looked at Joanna's short, messy hair, her strange clothes. "You look different," he whispered. "I am different," Joanna said, kneeling so she was eye level with him. "I am free, and I want you to be free too," Audrey says. Leo started, his lip trembling. "Audrey says you broke the dinner because you hate us." "Audrey lies," Joanna said firmly. "Leo, do you remember the robot we built? The one with the mismatched parts?" Leo nodded slowly. "We built it strong," she said. "We built it to last. I am that robot right now, Leo, and I am here to take you on an adventure. But you have to trust me. You have to run." Suddenly, Greta's phone pinged. Then it pinged again. Then it started vibrating incessantly. Across the room, the television program was interrupted. Breaking news: Winthrop Industries scandal. New York Times releases damning audio recording of C.E. Garrett Winthrop sanctioning faulty construction on Vista Tower. Greta looked at the television, her mouth falling open. "The building is unsafe. the news anchor was saying. Sources allege highly unstable foundation work. We have to go now, Joanna said, standing up and extending her hand to Leo. Leo looked at the television, seeing a picture of his father looking angry. Then he looked at Joanna. He saw the fierce determination in her eyes. The same look she had when she stayed up all night fighting his fever. He took her hand. "Hey!" Greta shouted, snapping out of her shock. "You can't take him!" Joanna grabbed a heavy crystal vase from the side table, wedding gift from Eleanor, and hurled it at the glass sliding door leading to the balcony. It shattered with a deafening crash, setting off the perimeter alarm. "Weep, weep, I just did," Joanna said. She scooped Leo up. He was getting heavy, but adrenaline made him light as a feather and sprinted not for the front door, but for the kitchen. "Security is coming up the main lift," Greta screamed after her. "There is no way out." Joanna kicked open the door to the pantry. Inside, hidden behind a rack of vintage wines, was a dumbwaiter. It was old, meant for moving groceries between staff prep floors in the original design before Garrett renovated. It was tight, but it led down to the sub-basement laundry. "Climb in," Joanna ordered Leo. "It is dark. It is a secret tunnel," she promised. "Just like Batman." Leo scrambled in. Joanna squeezed in after him, contorting her body painfully. She hit the manual descent button just as the heavy front doors of the penthouse burst open. "Clear the room," a man's voice bellowed. "She is in here somewhere." The dumbwaiter machinery groaned and jerked downward, plunging them into darkness. As they descended through the shaft, Joanna pulled out her phone. One bar of service, she saw the headline from Sarah Jenkins. It was live. The stock price of Winthrop Industries had already plummeted 12% in 10 minutes. But then a new notification popped up. A direct message on her anonymous Instagram account. User, Wolfe Capital message, "Impressive work. Mrs. Winthrop, you've drawn blood. But if you want to kill the beast, you're going to need more than a knife. You need an army. Meet me at Pier 17. Come alone." The dumbwaiter hit the bottom with a thud. Joanna grabbed Leo's hand. "Ready to run, kid?" Leo gripped her hand tight. "Ready." They burst out into the laundry room, scattering startled staff, and ran into the rainy New York afternoon. The Empire was burning, and Joanna Vance had the matches. The service exit of the Millennium Spire spit them out into a deluge of gray rain and sirens. The streets were chaos. Fire trucks were trying to weave through the gridlock, their horns blasting, creating the perfect auditory cover for a getaway. Joanna gripped Leo's hand so tight, her knuckles turned white. "Head down, hood up," she commanded. "My shoes are wet," Leo complained, his voice small and trembling. He was clutching a half-eaten granola bar he'd found in his pocket, the only provision for their exile. "We'll get new shoes, better ones. Faster ones," Joanna promised, scanning the street. Her Honda was where she left it, looking like a dented tin can amidst the luxury sedans of the financial district. She strapped Leo into the booster seat in the back. Thank God she hadn't taken it, out and threw the car into gear. As she pulled away from the curb, she saw the rear view mirror fill with flashing lights. But they weren't for her. They were for the building she had just sabotaged. She didn't speed. Speed attracted attention. She drove at the exact speed limit, engaging the turn signals with agonizing precision, blending into the flow of yellow taxis and delivery trucks. Her phone buzzed in the cup holder. "Ethan, 5 missed calls, Ethan. You have 20 minutes to bring him back, or I call the FBI for kidnapping." "Don't test me, Joanna." Joanna picked up the phone. She didn't text back. She navigated to the settings and disabled the GPS location services. Then she pulled out the SIM card and tossed it out the window as they merged onto the FDR drive. "Mom," Leo asked from the back. "Where are we going?" "To a meeting." Joanna said, her eyes flicking to the fuel gauge. E, with a potential investor. Pier 17 was a ghost town in the storm. The trendy shops and restaurants were shuttered against the weather. Joanna parked the Honda in the shadow of the overpass, the rain drumming a deafening rhythm on the roof. Why here? Why now? Wolf Fay Capital. The name sounded like a hedge fund or a threat. Usually, they were the same thing. Stay here, Leo, Joanna said, locking the doors. Count the raindrops on the window. If you get to 100 and I am not back, you honk the horn, long and loud. Okay? Leo nodded, his eyes wide. 1, 2, 3. Joanna stepped out into the storm. She pulled her leather jacket tight. She had no weapon, just her wits, and a terrifying amount of adrenaline. At the end of the pier, facing the churning East River, sat a matte black Range Rover. The engine was idling. Joanna walked toward it. She didn't run. She walked with the purposeful stride of a CEO entering a boardroom, despite the water soaking through her boots. As she approached, the rear window rolled down. The interior was warm, smelling of expensive leather and peppermint tea. Sitting in the back seat was not a corporate raider in a suit, nor a shadowy hacker. It was an older woman, perhaps in her 60s, with silver hair cut in a sharp, geometrical bob that rivaled Joanna's own. She wore a cream-colored cashmere coat that looked like it cost more than Joanna's tuition. She held a tablet in one manicured hand. "You are late," the woman said. Her voice was smoke and gravel. "Traffic was murder," Joanna replied, stopping 3 feet from the car. "Who are you?" The woman tapped the tablet screen. "I am the person who just watched Winthrop Industries lose $400 million in market cap in 45 minutes. It was beautiful, a masterclass in asymmetrical warfare. I asked who you are." "I am Morgan Wolf," the woman said. "And 20 years ago, Garrett Winthrop's father drove my family's construction firm into bankruptcy to clear the land for that monstrosity you just evacuated." Joanna paused. The Wolf Group. She remembered reading the case study in business school, a hostile takeover, executed with brutal efficiency. "You want revenge," Joanna stated. "I have money, Joanna, I have influence. I have lawyers who eat FBI agents for breakfast," Morgan said, engaging Joanna's gaze. "What I don't have, what I haven't had in 20 years, sis. An insider who knows where the bodies are buried. Until today." Morgan extended a hand through the window. It wasn't a handshake, it was an invitation. "You have the kill file," Morgan said. "I know you do, but you have no money, no home. And by tomorrow morning, your face will be on every wanted poster in the tri-state area. You can't fight a war while you are running for your life." "And you are offering what? Sanctuary?" "I am offering a partnership," Morgan corrected. "I have a safe house in the Catskills, off the grid, fully stocked, secure comms. You go there, you regroup, you process the data on that drive, and in return, Morgan smiled, a predator baring its teeth, you give me the blueprint to destroy him completely, not just the stock price, the man. I want him legally, financially, and socially obliterated." Joanna looked back at the Honda. She could see Leo's small hand pressing against the glass. He was counting. She looked back at Morgan. Joanna knew the cost of doing business with sharks. But right now, she was a minnow in an ocean of blood. "I have a son," Joanna said. "The house has a playroom," Morgan replied without missing a beat. "And a security detail of ex-Mossad." Joanna shivered. It wasn't the cold. It was the realization that she was crossing a line she could never uncross. She was no longer just a scorned wife. She was entering the big leagues of corporate espionage. "One condition," Joanna said. "Name it. I control the narrative." We leak what I say when I say it. Garrett is mine. You get his money, his buildings, his legacy. But his reputation, that's my kill. Morgan's smile widened. I think we're going to get along famously, Mrs. Winthrop. Miss Vance, Joanna corrected. My name is Joanna Vance. Get in the car, Miss Vance. Your Honda is an embarrassment. Joanna turned back to the Honda. She opened the door. Leo, she said, her voice steady. Stop counting, we're upgrading. As she transferred a sleepy Leo into the warm, plush backseat of the Range Rover. Joanna took one last look at the city skyline across the water. Somewhere in that grid, Garrett was screaming at his lawyers. She tossed the keys to the Honda into the East River. They sank with a barely audible plip. The old Joanna was at the bottom of the river. The new Joanna was riding shotgun with the wolf. The car pulled away, disappearing into the rain-slicked night. The rebranding was complete. Now, the acquisition phase began. The safe house wasn't a cabin. It was a fortress disguised as modern art. Located deep in the Catskills, reached only by a miles-long gravel driveway obscured by dense pine. The structure was concrete and glass, cantilevered over a rushing gorge. No Wi-Fi broadcast, Morgan explained as the heavy steel front door hissed shut behind them, locking out the storm. Everything is hardwired. Fiber optic lines run directly into a shielded server in the basement. Even if the NSA is looking for a signal, this place is a black hole. Leo was asleep on Joanna's shoulder, exhausted by the trauma of his escape. A silent man with a military bearing-on of the ex-Mossad Morgan had took their wet coats. The guest wing is to the left, Morgan said, pulling off her leather gloves. Put the boy to bed, then join me in the library. We have work to do. Joanna carried Leo to a bedroom that smelled of lavender and sterile cleanliness. She tucked him into a bed that felt like a cloud. He stirred, clutching her sleeve. Mom, he mumbled. Is the robot safe? The robot is upgrading, Joanna whispered, smoothing his hair. Go to sleep, Leo. I am right here. She waited until his breathing evened out, then stepped into the hallway. She checked the lock on the door, then she marched toward the library. The library was a command center. 3 massive monitors dominated one wall, displaying live feeds of global stock markets, cable news networks, and social media sentiment graphs. Morgan stood by a rolling cart, pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid. Cognac, Morgan said, sliding a glass across the mahogany table. Vintage. Cost more than your ex-husband's car drink. You look like you are vibrating. Joanna took the glass but didn't drink. She set her hard drive on the table. Ethan has likely frozen my accounts by now, Joanna said, her voice steady. He'll have flagged my passport. He'll be pushing the mentally unstable narrative to the police to get an Amber Alert issued for Leo. He already has, Morgan said, pointing a remote at the center screen, breaking. Manhunt for socialite Joanna Winthrop, wanted for custodial interference and corporate espionage. The screen showed a photo of Joanna from 3 years ago looking manic at a party where she'd had too much champagne. A carefully selected image to support his narrative. He is playing the victim card, Morgan mused, taking a sip, clever but predictable. He thinks I am running, Joanna said, her eyes narrowing at the screen. He thinks I am going to hide in a motel and cry until the U.S. Marshals kick down the door. She plugged the hard drive into the console on the table. I am not running, Joanna said. I am reloading. The screens flickered. The news feed vanished, replaced by a cascading directory of file folders. Project Vista, the Cayman Loop. Senate bribes 2020 to 2023. Morgan's eyebrows shot up. Good Lord, you didn't just take the cookie jar, you took the whole bakery. I was his executive assistant before I was his wife, Joanna said, typing furiously on the wireless keyboard. I organized his digital life. He liked things compartmentalized. He thought if he put the illegal stuff in a folder marked personal tax, no one would look, because he thinks he is untouchable. Joanna pulled up a spreadsheet. Complex webs of numbers filled the center monitor. The building inspector recording was a jab, Joanna explained. It hurt his pride and dipped the stock. But investors don't care about safety. They care about profit. If we want to kill Winthrop Industries, we don't attack the product. We attack the liquidity. She pointed to a column highlighted in red. Ethan has been leveraging the company's pension fund to cover the losses on his personal real estate gambles in Dubai. He's moving the money through a shell company called Helix Capital. Morgan leaned in, her eyes hungry. Embezzlement? That is federal. It is worse than embezzlement, Joanna corrected. Helix Capital doesn't exist. It is a ghost address in the Bahamas. He is effectively laundering his employees' retirement savings to buy gold-plated toilets for his desert palaces. If we leak this, Morgan murmured, the SEC freezes his assets immediately. The board of directors will have to fire him to save their own skins. But we need to verify the transaction loop, Joanna said. I have the ledger, but I don't have the bank authorization codes. They're on a separate server, an air-gapped server in his private office at the tower. Morgan frowned. So we're stuck? We can't go back there. We don't have to, Joanna said. A wicked smile touched her lips. Because Zagret is a creature of habit. He uses the same authorization key for the bank as he does for his personal entertainment. Joanna opened a new window. It was a login screen for a high-end, extremely exclusive escort service called the Velvet Rope. Ethan spends $50,000 a month here, Joanna said flatly. I found out a year ago. I didn't leave him because I needed more evidence. I installed a keylogger on his iPad. She hit enter. Access granted. A stream of data populated the screen. Dates, times, locations, and transaction IDs linked to the Cayman accounts. He is paying for his mistresses directly out of the pension fund, Morgan whispered, actually looking shocked. That responsible greed I can understand. But this is sloppy. This is arrogant. He thinks he is God, Joanna said. Let's show him he is mortal. How do you want to play this? Morgan asked. Need times again. No, Joanna said. The Times is too slow. They'll want a fact. Check for a week. We need speed. We need chaos. Joanna looked at Morgan. Do you have a contact at the Justice Department? Someone who hates Garrett almost as much as we do. Morgan smiled slow and wide. I know an ambitious assistant US attorney who has been trying to nail the Winthrop family for racketeering for 5 years. Send him the file, Joanna commanded. Then, post the escort receipts on Twitter. Tag the Winthrop Industries Board of Directors. Morgan laughed. A dry, barking sound. You are vicious, Joanna. I love it. I am just getting started, Joanna said. While he is busy fighting the feds and his own board, I am going to go after the one thing he values more than his money, which is his mother, Manhattan. The Winthrop penthouse. The glass from the balcony door had been swept up, but the cold wind still whistled through the plywood covering the hole. Ethan Winthrop paced the living room, a phone pressed to his ear. His knuckles were white. I don't care about the optics, he screamed. Fix it. Tell them the recording was AI generated. Tell them she is off her meds. Just stop the bleeding. He hurled the phone onto the white leather sofa. It bounced and landed on the rug. Eleanor Winthrop sat in an armchair sipping tea. She looked unbothered by the destruction of her son's home, or his reputation. You are panicking, Garrett, she said coolly. It is unbecoming. She has the drive, Mother. Garrett turned on her. Do you know what is on there? Everything, the Silt reports. The bribes. The pension transfers. Eleanor set her tea down. Then you need to stop treating this like a PR problem and start treating it like a pest control problem. The elevator doors pinged open. Ethan spun around. It wasn't the police. It wasn't his lawyer. A man walked in. He wore a charcoal suit that fit too perfectly. He had no tie, and his shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, revealing a faint scar on his neck. He moved with a quiet, predatory grace. Mr. Silas Thorne, Eleanor said, acknowledging him with a nod. Mrs. Winthrop, the man replied. His voice was smooth, deep, and utterly devoid of warmth. He looked at Garrett. You have a leak. I have a wife who stole my property and my son, Garrett spat. A wife can be found, Silas said, walking to the shattered window. He touched the edge of the plywood. But a woman who executes an exfiltration like this, she isn't just a wife anymore. She is an operative. Silas turned back to face them. I can find her, I can retrieve the data, and I can bring the boy back. And the wife? Garrett asked. Silas didn't blink. Recovering the data is the priority. Collateral damage is sometimes unavoidable in wet work. Ethan hesitated. He looked at his mother. Eleanor nodded, almost imperceptibly. Look at that nod, that tiny, imperceptible movement from Mommy Dearest. It tells you everything you need to know about where monsters come from. Garrett didn't become a sociopath in a vacuum. He was raised in a petri dish of pearl, clutching, enabling. Eleanor wasn't protecting her son. She was authorizing a hit. Remember this next time you think family values means actual morals. Sometimes it just means no witnesses. Do it, Garrett said, his voice dropping. Find her, silence her, I want my life back. Silas Thorne smiled. It was the smile of a shark sensing blood in the water. Consider it done. The morning sun over the Catskills was deceptive. It painted the gorge in soft golds and pleasant greens, hiding the fact that the world outside was burning. In the command center, the mood was electric. Look at this, Morgan said, pointing a manicured nail at the center screen. Their PR team is trying to bury the escort receipts under a mental health crisis statement about you. But the internet isn't buying it. Number Winthrop wallet is trending higher than the Super Bowl. Joanna watched the feed. The memes were brutal. Someone had photoshopped Garrett's face onto a Monopoly man running away with bags labeled pension fund. Humiliation is good, Joanna said, her eyes scanning a fresh set of documents she'd just decrypted. But humiliation heals, prison doesn't. She zoomed in on a file labeled WFF Southeast Asia Operations. The Winthrop Family Foundation, Joanna muttered. Eleanor's pride and joy. Morgan raised an eyebrow. The charity? You are going after the saint of Park Avenue. That woman has raised more money for orphans than the Red Cross. The public adores her. That is because the public doesn't know geography, Joanna said. She tapped a series of coordinates into a mapping software overlaid on the screen. Look at the location of the 3 orphanages Eleanor built in Cambodia last year. Morgan leaned in. Remote jungle. Now look at the geological survey Garrett commissioned 3 months before the orphanages broke ground. Joanna overlaid a second map. Bright purple patches lit up the exact same coordinates. Rare earth minerals, Morgan breathed. Cobalt, lithium, expensive dirt. Joanna confirmed. You can't just mine in a protected zone, unless, of course, you are building a humanitarian aid center. The orphanages are front operations. The school buses shipping supplies in are shipping ore out. and the local warlord providing security. He is on the Foundation's payroll as a consultant. Joanna turned to Morgan, her face grim. She is not saving children, Morgan. She is using them as human shields to strip, mine a nature preserve for battery components. Morgan set her drink down. For the first time, the cynical amusement was gone from her face. She looked genuinely disgusted. That is evil. That is Eleanor, Joanna corrected. She is the architect. Garrett is just the contractor. So, Morgan said, her voice dropping an octave, we released the geological surveys alongside the construction manifests and the payments to the warlord, Joanna added. I want every donor who ever sat at a Winthrop gala to feel sick to their stomach. I want the IRS auditing the foundation by noon. Joanna hit upload Manhattan, Pier 17. Silas Thorne stood in the rain, which had thinned to a miserable drizzle. He was looking at a patch of oil on the wet pavement. He held a tablet in his hand, linked directly to the NYPD's citywide surveillance. Grid access granted, courtesy of a bribe to a precinct captain that cost more than most people's annual salary. Whirlwind coverage on camera 4B. Silas spoke into his headset. Timeline, 18 o'clock to 19 o'clock yesterday. On the tablet screen, grainy black and white footage played. He saw the battered Honda Civic pull in. He saw the woman get out. Pause, Silas ordered. He zoomed in on the woman. The resolution was poor, but the posture was unmistakable. Joanna Winthrop. She didn't look like a frantic housewife. She moved like a soldier. Resume. He watched her walk to the end of the pier. He watched the interaction with the black SUV, freeze frame, isolate plate. The software churned for a moment, sharpening the image of the rear license plate on the Range Rover. Knee plate 887 WF registered to Cerberus Holdings, LLC Silas, tapped into a corporate registry database. Cerberus Holdings was a shell, but a deep dive into its acquisition history showed it was a subsidiary of Wolf Capital. Morgan Wolf, Silas whispered to himself. A grim smile touched his lips. It made sense. The old rivalry. An enemy of my enemy is my friend. He had a name. He had a vehicle. And if he knew Morgan Wolf, he knew she didn't hide in cheap motels. She would go to ground in one of her fortified retreats. Silas pulled up a list of Wolf Capital's real estate assets. Most were commercial skyscrapers, but there were 3 residential properties listed under private trusts. 1, a penthouse in London. 2, a vineyard in Napa 3, a server farm Fay residential compound in upstate New York. Silas tapped the 3rd option, bingo. He dialed Garrett's number. I have them, Silas said, as soon as the line connected. Where? Garrett's voice was ragged, desperate, upstate, a private compound owned by Morgan Wolf. There was a pause. Morgan, that vindictive hag is behind this? She is providing the bunker. Your wife is providing the bullets, Silas said calmly. Does the authorization still stand, knowing who is involved? Assaulting a Wolf property acts as a declaration of war. Burn it, Garrett snarled. Burn it all down. Just get the drive. Understood, Silas said. I am en route. An AT 4 hours. He hung up, walked to his own nondescript sedan, and opened the trunk. Inside lay a suppressed sniper rifle, tactical body armor, and a breaching kit. He closed the trunk gently, the safe house. Mom. Joanna spun around in her swivel chair. Leo was standing in the doorway of the library, holding a stuffed bear Morgan had found for him. Hey, buddy, Joanna said, softening her voice instantly. Did you sleep? A little? Leo said. He walked over and looked at the giant screens filled with maps and numbers. Are you winning? Joanna hesitated. She looked at the cascading code on the screen, the destruction of the Winthrop legacy bit by bit. We're making sure the bad guys can't hurt anyone else, she said carefully. Is Dad a bad guy? Leo asked. The question hung in the air, heavy and heartbreaking. Joanna pulled him onto her lap. Your dad made some very bad choices because he wanted more money than he needed. And sometimes when people want too much, they forget how to be good. Suddenly, a red light began to flash on the far wall of the library. A low electronic chime echoed through the room. Morgan looked up from her tablet, her face pale. What is that? Joanna asked, feeling the hair on her arms stand up. It is the perimeter seismic sensor, Morgan said, standing up quickly. It detects heavy vehicles on the access road. Are you expecting a delivery? Morgan tapped a command into the security console. The live feed from the front gate 3, miles down the driveway, popped up on the main screen. A black sedan had stopped at the reinforced steel gate. A man got out. He didn't look at the intercom. He walked to the gate's control box. Joanna watched in horror as the man placed a small, brick-sized object on the hinges of the gate. Explosives, Joanna realized. Get down. On the screen. A flash of white silent light, followed a second later by the camera shaking violently. The heavy steel gate twisted and fell inward. The sedan drove through, rolling over the debris. He found us, Joanna whispered. How the hell did he find us so fast? It doesn't matter, Morgan snapped, hitting a big red button on her desk. Steel shutters began to slam down over the panoramic windows of the house. Lockdown initiated. Go to the safe room, Morgan ordered, grabbing a stark 9mm pistol from a hidden drawer in the desk. She racked the slide. Take the boy, go to the basement, lock the door from the inside. What about you? Joanna asked, shielding Leo. I built this place to withstand a siege, Morgan said, her eyes flashing with a dangerous light. But I need you to protect the data and the child. Go. Joanna grabbed Leo's hand. Run, Leo, run like we practiced. As they sprinted for the hallway, the sound of shattered glass echoed from the front of the house. Silas Thorne wasn't waiting to knock. The wolf was at the door, but the hunter had already breached the den. The house shuddered. It wasn't an explosion this time, but the heavy, rhythmic thud of a battering ram against the reinforced oak of the front door. Go, Morgan roared, leveling her stark 9mm at the hallway entrance. I'll buy you 3 minutes, maybe 4. Joanna didn't argue. She scooped Leo up, ignoring his whimper of protest, and sprinted for the heavy steel door disguised as a wine rack. She punched in the code 1 to 9, -8, -4, and tan the rack swung inward, revealing a concrete stairwell bathed in emergency red light. Mom, I am scared, Leo cried, burying his face in her neck. I know, baby, I know, Joanna panted, taking the stairs 2 at a time. We're playing the silent game now, like ninjas. Can you be a ninja for me? She reached the bottom. The basement wasn't a dungeon. It was a sterile, hum-filled server farm. Rows of black racks with blinking blue lights stretched back into the darkness. The air was frigid, kept at a constant 62 degrees for the machines. Joanna set Leo down inside a small maintenance cage at the far end, behind the main server bank. It had a heavy mesh door. Leo, listen to me, she said, kneeling to look him in the eye. She handed him her phone. It was unlocked, displaying a preloaded game. Put your headphones on. Turn the volume all the way up. Do not take them off until I tap you on the shoulder, understand? Leo nodded, his chin trembling. He put the oversized headphones on. Joanna watched him start the game, shutting out the world. She locked the cage. It wouldn't stop a bullet, but it would keep him from running into the line of fire. Above them, a muffled thud, crack echoed through the ventilation shafts. Then, silence. Joanna's heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. Morgan. The silence stretched, 5 seconds. 10. Then, heavy footsteps. Slow, deliberate. Moving across the hardwood floor above, Joanna scrambled to the main terminal desk. She didn't have a gun, she had a keyboard. And in a fully automated smart home, a keyboard was a weapon. She woke the terminal. Her fingers flew across the keys, bypassing Morgan's biometric locks with an override code she'd spotted earlier. System status, perimeter breached, Zone 1, foyer, motion detected. She pulled up the security feed. Silas Thorne was walking through the living room. He held his weapon at the low Redia suppressed carbine with a laser sight. He stepped over a shattered vase. Morgan was nowhere to be seen. Joanna prayed she was unconscious rather than dead. Silas paused. He looked directly at the hidden camera in the bookshelf, as if he could feel Joanna watching him. He tapped his earpiece. North wing clear, proceeding to lower levels. He knew, of course he knew. The heat signature of the servers would be visible on thermal imaging. Joanna looked around the room. She was trapped. There was no back exit from the server room, a fatal design flaw in Morgan's fortress. She looked at the screen again. Fire suppression system, Armageddon protocol, Halon gas, audio visual, theater mode, climate control, active, a plan formed. It was desperate, dangerous, and required precision timing. She heard the door at the top of the stairs click open. Joanna typed furiously, CMD, FE override, FE safety, FE protocols. CMD, FE audio, FE gain. FE max, CMD, FE lighting, FE strobe, FE freak, FE 20 hertz. The footsteps started down the concrete stairs. Clack, clack, clack. Silas was careful. He wouldn't rush. He would sweep every corner. Joanna crouched behind the main server rack. The keyboard pulled down onto the floor with her. She watched the shadow stretch across the floor from the stairwell. Silas emerged. He swept the room with the laser sight, the red dot dancing over the black server towers. He was wearing tactical goggles and noise-canceling comms. Mrs. Winthrop. Silas's voice was calm, amplified by the acoustics of the concrete room. There is nowhere to go. Give me the drive and the boy lives. You have my word. Joanna didn't answer. She waited until he took 2 more steps, moving him into the center of the aisle between the racks. Now she hit enter. The room exploded into chaos first. The lights. The overhead LEDs didn't just turn on. They strobed violently at 20 flashes. Per second frequency designed to induce disorientation and nausea. Simultaneously, the server room's PA system shrieked. It wasn't music. It was a high-frequency feedback loop, generated at max volume, even through noise. Canceling headphones, the pressure wave would be disorienting, vibrating the fluid in the inner ear. Silas stumbled. He flinched, raising a hand to his head, his rifle swaying. Then, Joanna executed the second command. Cooling system overdrive, FE exhaust vent reversal. The massive industrial fans at the back of the room roared to life, not sucking air out, but blasting a concentrated jet of freezing air directly down the center aisle. The sudden pressure change sent loose papers and dust swirling into a blinding vortex. Silas dropped to one knee, trying to find a target in the strobe. Lit hurricane. He fired blindly thwip sparks, flying as bullets ricocheted off the steel racks. Joanna stayed low, crawling. She wasn't running away. She was moving toward the fire suppression panel on the far wall. Silas was recovering. He was a professional. He ripped off his goggles, squinting against the strobe, and raised his weapon, bracing himself against a server rack. He saw movement. He swung the rifle toward Joanna. End of the line, he gritted out. Joanna reached the panel. She didn't pull the manual lever. That would trigger the halon gas, which would suck the oxygen out of the room and kill them all, including Leo. Instead, she ripped the cover off the electrical junction box next to it. "You are standing in a puddle," Joanna shouted over the noise. Silas looked down. The condensation from the rapidly cooling servers was pooling on the polished concrete floor. Joanna jammed a metal screwdriver into the exposed live wire of the 240-volt server power supply. Zez crack! A massive arc of blue electricity leaped from the box, grounded through the metal shelving, and surged across the wet floor. Silas screamed. His muscles seized. The rifle clattered from his hands. He convulsed violently for 3 seconds, conducting the current before the breaker finally tripped and the room plunged into total darkness and silence. The only sound was the smell of ozone and burnt insulation. Joanna waited, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. "Mom." Leo's small voice came from the cage. The blackout had stopped his game. Joanna fumbled for her phone and turned on the flashlight. Silas Thorne lay face down in the center aisle. He wasn't moving. Smoke drifted lazily from the sole of his boot. Joanna scrambled to her feet, shaking. She approached him cautiously. She kicked the rifle away, sliding it under a rack. Then she checked his pulse. It was there, faint, erratic, but there. He was alive, but he wouldn't be waking up anytime soon. "Mom." Leo rattled the cage door. Joanna ran to him, unlocking the mesh door. She pulled him into a crushing hug. "I've got you," she whispered. "I've got you. Did you win?" Leo asked, looking at the dark lump on the floor. "Yes," Joanna said, her voice hard. "We won this round." She grabbed the hard drive from the desk. Then she searched Silas's pockets. She found a set of car keys and a burner phone. "Come on," she said, hoisting Leo onto her hip. "We have to go before his friends show up." They climbed the stairs in the hallway. She found Morgan. The older woman was slumped against the wall, clutching her shoulder. There was blood on her white cashmere sweater, but her eyes were open. "You are alive," Joanna said, rushing to her. Vess Morgan wheezed, tapping her chest. "Broken rib, probably. He was fast." "He is down," Joanna said, electrified the basement floor. Morgan let out a pained, incredulous laugh. "Remind me never to piss you off. Tech support." "We can't stay," Joanna said. He called it in, proceeding to lower levels. "Someone ends will be listening." "My chopper," Morgan grunted, trying to stand, pad out back. "Pilot is on standby. Get to the pad." Joanna helped Morgan up, supporting her weight together. The three of them, the hacker, the tycoon, and the boys stumbled out the back door into the cool night air. 50 yards away, the rotors of a sleek Sikorsky helicopter began to turn, whining as they spun up to speed. As they ran across the lawn, Joanna's phone buzzed in her pocket. It was the burner she'd taken from Silas. She looked at the screen. A text message. "Sender unknown message. Status report immediately. If compromised, initiate protocol clean sweep." Joanna stopped the group at the edge of the helipad. She looked at the message. Then she looked back at the house, the fortress of glass and steel. If clean sweep meant what she thought it meant. "Get in the chopper," Joanna yelled, shoving Morgan and Leo toward the open door. "What about you?" Morgan shouted over the rotor wash. "I have to send a reply," Joanna said. She typed a response on Silas's phone. Status, target eliminated, retrieving drive, returning to base. It was a bluff. A delay tactic. She tossed the phone into the grass and jumped into the helicopter. "Go!" she screamed to the pilot. "Go, go, go!" The bird lifted off, banking hard to the east. As they climbed into the dark sky, Joanna looked down. The house was still standing. Her bluff had bought them time, but the war wasn't over. It had just moved to a new battlefield. "Where are we going?" Leo shouted over the noise, looking out the window. Joanna looked at Morgan. Morgan was pale, holding a compress to her ribs, but she was smiling a terrifying, wolfish grin. "Washington, D.C., Morgan said. "If they want a federal case, let's take it to the Capitol steps." Joanna nodded. Garrett had sent a killer. She was about to send a congressman. The helicopter blade thrummed a steady rhythm above them, cutting through the night toward the nation's capital. Inside the cabin, the atmosphere was tense but quiet. Leo had fallen asleep again, his head resting against Joanna's thigh, the trauma of the night finally overpowering his adrenaline. Morgan sat opposite them, her face pale but composed. The field dressing Joanna had applied from the chopper's med, Kit was holding. The bullet had impacted the ceramic plate of her vest, cracking a rib and bruising the lung. But she was alive. "You have the drive?" Morgan asked, her voice gritty. Joanna touched the breast pocket of her jacket. "Right here, good." Morgan winced as the chopper hit a pocket of turbulence. "Because we're not just going to DC to hide, we're going to make a trade?" "A trade?" Joanna frowned. "I thought we were leaking it all." "We are," Morgan said, "but you don't destabilize $1 trillion multinational conglomerate without getting some political air cover. If we just dump the files, Winthrop's lawyers will have it scrubbed from the internet in an hour on national security grounds. They own half the defense contractors in Virginia. So who are we trading with?" Morgan pulled out her secure satellite phone. Senator Marcus Sterling, chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Joanna's eyes widened. Sterling, the man who has been trying to pass the Corporate Transparency Act for a decade. Garrett hates him. Exactly, Morgan said, dialing a number from memory. Sterling needs a win before the midterms. We have the smoking gun that proves Winthrop Industries is selling dual-use technology to sanctioned regimes. That is treason, Joanna, not just fraud. Morgan put the phone to her ear. "Marcus, it is Morgan. I am calling in the favor. Yes, the big one. I need a secure room at the Capitol, 2 hours. No, not the office. The CIF bring the Attorney General. Because I am bringing you the head of Garrett Winthrop on a silver platter." She hung up and looked at Joanna. "We have a meeting at 4 a.m. Washington, D.C. 4:15 a.m. The chopper touched down on a private pad in Arlington. A black Suburban with diplomatic plates was waiting on the tarmac. Engines idling. 2 men in dark suits stood by the door Secret Service, judging by the earpieces. "Ms. Wolfe," the lead agent said, opening the door as they approached. "Senator Sterling is expecting you." They drove through the silent streets of D.C., past the monuments glowing white in the darkness. The city felt asleep, but Joanna knew better. In this town, power never slept, it just changed shifts. They were ushered into a side entrance of the Hart Senate office building through layers of security that made the airport look like a joke. Metal detectors, retinal scans, chemical sniffers. Finally, they reached a heavy, nondescript door in the basement levels. The sensitive compartmented information facility, a room designed to be impenetrable to bugs, signals, and spies. Inside, a silver-haired man sat at a long table, reviewing a file. Next to him sat a stern-looking woman in a Navy suit. Attorney General Elena Rostova. Senator Sterling stood up. "Morgan, you look like hell." "Rough night, Marcus," Morgan said, easing herself into a chair. "This is Joanna Winthrop, and her son, Leo." Sterling looked at Joanna. His gaze was sharp, assessing. "Mrs. Winthrop, you've caused quite a stir. The president was briefed on the cyber incident at your husband's firm an hour ago." It wasn't an incident, Joanna said, placing the hard drive on the table. It was an extraction. She pushed the drive toward the Attorney General. This contains proof of massive pension fraud, bribing of foreign officials, and illegal export of restricted guidance chips to embargoed nations. Rostova didn't touch the drive yet. That is a heavy accusation. Do you have chain of custody? I have the original source files, Joanna said. Emails from Garrett to the buyers. Bank transfers authorized by his biometric key and geotechnical data proving his charity is a front for illegal strip mining. Sterling looked at Rostova. If half of what she says is true, Winthrop goes down. Hard. But there is a condition, Joanna interjected. Rostova narrowed her eyes. This isn't a plea bargain, Mrs. Winthrop. You committed corporate espionage. I am a whistleblower, Joanna corrected. And my condition isn't immunity for me. It is protection for my son. She looked at Leo, who was sitting quietly in a corner chair, coloring in a notebook Sterling's aide had given him. Ethan will try to take him, Joanna said. He has private security forces that act like death squads. I want Leo placed in protective custody with my sister in Oregon until the trial is over. And I want a restraining order that covers the entire eastern seaboard. Sterling nodded slowly. Done, we can have marshals on the plane within the hour. One more thing, Morgan added. I want Silas Thorne. Rostova stiffened. Thorne is a ghost. Intelligence agencies have been tracking him for years. We don't even know what he looks like. He is currently unconscious in the basement of my property in the Catskills, Morgan said with a grim smile. You might want to send a cleanup crew before he wakes up. He has a very interesting contact list on his phone. Rostova picked up the hard drive. If Thorne is there and this drive is real, then we have a deal. The aftermath. The sun was rising over the Potomac when they emerged from the building. The air was crisp and clean. You did it, Morgan said, leaning against the Suburban. We did it, Joanna said. She looked at Leo, who was yawning. Is it over? The hard part is over, Morgan said. Now comes the lawyers, the media circus, the testimony. I can handle lawyers, Joanna said. She felt lighter than she had in years. The weight of the secret, the fear of Garrett, the terror of Runninjit was all lifting. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. It was a news alert. Breaking, C.E. Garrett Winthrop, detained by FBI in dawn raid on Penthouse. Stock trading halted for Winthrop Industries, pending federal investigation. Joanna smiled. It was the first genuine smile she'd worn in a long time. Mom, Leo tugged on her sleeve. Look, he pointed to a television screen in the window of a nearby cafe. It showed footage of Garrett being led out of his building in handcuffs, a jacket thrown over his head. He is going away, Leo, Joanna said, kneeling down to hug him. For a long, long time. 6 months later, the Oregon coast was rugged and beautiful, a stark contrast to the manicured steel of New York. Joanna sat on the porch of a small beach house, watching Leo run in the surf with a golden retriever. Her phone rang. It was Morgan. Turn on the television, Morgan said without preamble. Joanna walked inside and clicked the remote. Sentencing hearing concludes. Winthrop sentenced to 25 years. Eleanor Winthrop indicted on conspiracy charges. The screen showed Garrett looking gaunt and furious, shouting at the cameras as he was led away. He turned on his mother, Morgan said, her voice rich with satisfaction. Traded her for a reduced sentence, classy to the end. And Thorne, Joanna asked. Vanished from federal custody during transport, Morgan said, her tone hardening slightly. But he knows better than to come back. He is burned. If he surfaces, every agency from here to Interpol will be on him. Good riddance, Joanna said. So, Morgan said, transitioning to business mode. Now that you are a free woman and legally divorced, I have a proposition. I am listening. Wolf Capital is opening a new division, ethical intelligence. We help corporations find rot in their own systems before it kills them. Sort of a proactive internal affairs. Joanna laughed. You want me to be a professional spy? I want you to be a cleaner, Morgan corrected. You took down a titan with a laptop and a grudge. Imagine what you could do with a budget. Joanna looked out the window at Leo. He was safe. He was happy. But she knew that safety wasn't something you were given. It was something you maintained. I have some conditions, Joanna said. Name them. I work remotely, and I get weekends off. Deal, Morgan said. Welcome to the team, partner. Joanna hung up. She walked back out to the porch and took a deep breath of the salty air. The storm was over. But the work was just beginning. Let's break down the anatomy of this takedown, because it was surgical. Joanna didn't just leave a bad marriage, she dismantled a corrupt regime. And she did it by using the oldest trick in the patriarchy's book against them. Invisibility. Garrett and his mommy ignored her because she was just the wife. They talked about bribes in front of her. They left passwords lying around. They assumed she was too busy picking out flower arrangements to notice they were pouring faulty concrete. Her invisibility was her superpower. She collected evidence while they collected appetizers. And that ending, working for Morgan Wolf, perfection. It wasn't a happily ever after where she finds a new man and settles down. It was a competently ever after. She leveraged her trauma into a career. She took the skills she learned surviving a narcissist and monetized them. So here is my question for you. Have you ever been the invisible woman in the room, the one everyone underestimated until it was too late? Did you keep the receipts? And for the love of all that is holy, if you are in a relationship where you have to ask for the Wi-Fi password to your own life, change the locks tonight. Tell me your I kept the receipts moment in the comments. I am pouring the tea, Madam Read Out.